Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Thunder, and this is Two Dads React. And we've got a spicy show for you today. ChatGPT won't meme Mohammed, but memes Jesus? I wonder what that means. We'll be pondering that. We'll be going back and forth on some Christian and Islam. Is it a Christianity versus Islam episode? Is that what this is? I don't know. But we've got all kinds of things to share, all kinds of videos to share, all kinds of discussion to be had today on Two Dads React. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. What's happening, man? How you doing?
Just trying to get ready here, man. Takes forever. How you been?
I'm all right. Had a really great show last week. That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
Do another one.
Yeah, for sure,
This is a
man.
pretty spicy topic, and maybe will provide an opportunity for us to dig a little bit into our apologetics past.
I found another topic right before like right after I told you that topic for this live stream. It has to do with this new game that came out, Diablo 4.
Mm.
And I just did a video on it right before, earlier today. And it's like, we should talk a little bit about that too. This
Sure,
Diablo
absolutely.
4. Yeah,
Plenty
man.
of
Because it's pretty
space and
crazy.
opportunity.
It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy, man. Little stuff involved in that. But
Yeah. So I'm looking forward. Okay, so let's jump right into it without further ado. And I thought that it would be interesting. Let's see here. I've got a few videos that are sort of, oops, wrong one. That are sort of, kind of, uh, apologetics sort of tone to them. Sort of conversations between, sort of Christianity and Islam. So I thought that that might be an interesting tie-in and to get the blood flowing. Folks, please like the video, like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member. We'll get access to all archive videos, support independent media, and Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. And you can also buy me a sandwich by shooting me a Cash App sandwich gang. You know how we do it. And let's go ahead and play this. Here we go.
My Muslim friends say that although Jesus speaks the absolute truth, Muhammad also speaks absolute truth. And the problem is they contradict each other on certain points. You cannot have A be absolute true and then B be absolute true if A and B contradict each other. Because that does nothing then but to allow for C to come along, claiming C is absolute truth, in spite of the fact that C contradicts both B and A. You cannot have an absolute truth contradicted by another absolute truth.
Did Jesus ever claim to be God?
Yeah, he sure did.
Yes.
John 8:58, Jesus says, before Abraham was born, I am. In John 10:30, Jesus says, I and the Father are one. In John 14:9, Jesus says, he who has seen me has seen the Father. Clearly, Jesus claimed to be God.
it's interesting.
So this is interesting. On one of these other videos I have, the guy, he takes issue. So this is like this sort of, not that video. I got a bunch of these. Let's see, what is that?
1 second here, dude.
Okay, wait a minute. I think it might be this one.
There we go.
It might be this one. I think it's. Let's get rid of these.
I got something rather curious that I mentioned over. Like I said, I did a video earlier about this game Diablo 4, and I talked about a concept. I think I mentioned the concept before on our live stream, but it has to do with Islam, and I'll talk about that later. But it basically has to do with this interesting little concept where you have two goddesses, Artemis or Diana, depending on which culture you want to talk about, and Venus or Aphrodite, and how there's like this contrast that the devil uses to sort of steer culture in the world. And it's like really interesting how Artemis or Diana relates directly to Islam and also relates to false religious leaders in Christianity. And I can talk about that a little bit later. It's pretty cool. Pretty interesting.
Sure. Let's see here. There's one I wanted to play in particular, and I'm having trouble finding it. What is this? Well, that's okay. There's plenty to go around. Let's see here.
Trying to get.
Here's the one. Let's see that we're gonna play right now. Not that one.
Having fun
Okay,
getting comfortable here, man.
Getting close to it. You can see I got a bunch of these videos. Goodness.
You got a lot
All
of them.
right, so here we go. Let's take a look at
Muhammad says repeatedly in the Quran, Jesus is not God.
The Quran said, the Quran is not the words of Muhammad.
All right, fine.
Quran is the word of Allah. This is a simple fact that you don't know.
Okay.
And there is only one Quran. We don't have tens of different versions of the Quran like the Bible.
You bet.
There is one single Quran.
Right.
And bring me a single proof that two Qurans, they have two different pages, but two different sentences. I will challenge you.
Good.
Bring a Quran from 100 years ago, 200, 500, even 1,000, 1,400 years ago.
Right.
All of them. Everything is written in the same sentence. There isn't a single vowel is different.
You bet.
Leave alone. We have this Bible. We have this Bible.
Right.
The old one, the new one, the green one, the yellow one, the tall one, the short one. No.
You bet.
Why? I tell you why. It's written in the Quran. A lot has been changed.
All right.
A lot in those books have been changed. But if you Allah sends a book, Allah sent the Quran, and He promised in it. He said, and I will protect it. The last two were John the Baptist, and then we have Jesus. He too was killed. By the way, Jesus wasn't killed. Allah says in the Quran, He took him and He brought a man like Jesus. We thought he was killed, but he wasn't. Because Allah would not allow any harm to come to Jesus. Those we believe, and every time we mention the name of Jesus or Moses, we will say, peace be upon them.
Good. Now, please answer my question now. Very simple question.
Shoot.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, eyewitnesses of Christ, record, we heard Jesus claim to be God. You reject that. You accept a man who lived 500 years after Christ, who never met Christ. You accept his testimony that Jesus is not God over the eyewitnesses. Why do you do that? Why? Other than that you believe the Quran's the word of God. See, you
can't answer that.
That's an interesting point. Definitely.
Yeah. So I
So,
thought
I mean-
that was interesting. The critique, actually, the Christian perspective. There's all of these different translations. Matter of fact, you hear this woman here making the same. Let's see here. Where is it at? You hear her making the same exact criticism. Here, let's listen to this. Real
That the
quick.
Bible has
All
different
these-
translations, or what? The Bible has different translations.
So this, well, here it'll be clear.
If you were such a godly man who's returned his whole life around for God, you should learn for a little bit more acceptance and tolerance.
Let me ask you this. Is God tolerant?
I think God made us all in his light. He didn't make any mistakes, right? So if he created trans people, then he did it for a reason.
Did he create trans people, or do trans people choose to be trans?
It was not a choice for me.
You didn't choose to go on hormones. You don't choose to dress this way. You don't choose to identify as a woman. You don't choose to wear a weave. You don't choose to put on makeup and present yourself as a woman. So I'm going to go back to the original question. You said it's my job as a Christian, godly man to be tolerant because that's what Christians are supposed to do. My original question is God tolerant?
I think it's your job to mind your business.
No, my question to you is God tolerant? You projected all of these
I would say God
values.
is tolerant.
In Genesis, it says that when God created mankind, he made them male and female. And in Leviticus, it says for a male to have sexual relations with another man as he would with a woman, that is an abomination in God's eyes and is worthy of being put to death.
How many times has the Bible been translated? How many times has the Bible been translated?
This is correct, is it not?
The biggest thing that we harp on in Judaism is a man should not lie in bed with another man, and then we take that to mean don't.
Do you guys
be gay.
know that scripture was changed so many times though? Oh, the Bible has been translated. Obviously, that's not a falsehood. It was not written in English, was it? No. Do you know Latin?
It wasn't written in Latin.
Okay, whatever was
Aramaic.
written in. Oh yes. Okay, it was been.
Aramaic,
my whole point
Greek,
is.
and Hebrew.
Let me finish.
You're trying
Jesus
to educate
Christ.
me on the Bible.
You can't blaspheme that hard. Let me effing finish, and then she throw out the name of the Lord. The funny thing is, people that don't believe in God and don't read the Bible always trying to tell Christians how to interpret the Bible. Isn't that odd to you?
Okay, so you
think-
saw
I
the
think she
point
claims-
that was made.
She claims to be a believer, though. Isn't that the lady that thinks says she's a believer or something?
I don't
think
know
she
that
says
she says that she's a believer. She
Well,
may
she
be, she may
says,
not.
yeah, she says
Yeah.
she is. I think
Okay.
that's the
Yeah.
one.
So, but here's the thing that you saw that there's sort of a thread between
Yeah,
those videos, and one of the
right.
claims is that the Bible's been basically tampered with, translated into a bunch of different languages, blah blah blah, whereas the Quran is only in one.
Right,
There's only
right, right.
one, which that's actually false,
Yeah,
because there
I know.
actually are multiple versions of the Quran also. Um,
Yeah.
and
I think there was like 50, right? Wasn't according to David Wood, I watched him. He said that if you look at some of these books that surround the Quran, that there was like 50 versions and they basically burned all of them and just kept
right.
one of them or something. I don't know. I don't know much about this. That's just what I've heard. He, of course, has studied this a lot. David Wood, the guy from Act 17, you know,
Mhm.
or used to do videos here on YouTube. And maybe he still does. I don't know, but he gave up his channel or whatever it was. But yeah, I mean, there is people that mess with the word of God. I mean, Jesus said, "Beware of the scribes; they write down the word of God." And clearly, you can have a false sense of security by thinking that the Quran has only had one version or something like that. But actually, they do translate it into English. They've translated it into other languages, and they do have testimony of people early on that were with Muhammad that say there was many copies and they just burn all the ones that were deviant or whatever they claimed as deviant or different versions. Instead of arguing, they just deleted all of them but one and then kept the one. And I mean, of course, they all speak Arabic, which of course today we have lots of different languages around the world. So, I mean, honestly, that's not really, I don't really consider that really a legitimate argument because you do have the original Greek and Hebrew of the Bible. And
Right.
that I would say, with the Septuagint, that's very reliable. That is the word of God. You could argue and debate about English translations all day, right? Because there's a
Right.
lot of different ones and anybody can make one, right? So
Yeah, I mean that is true. I mean, I have some issues with the NIV in particular, um, and some issues with there's a few translations, but the thing is that you can consult the original language, and the translations are just that they're translations. They're
right.
not intended to be quote unquote interpretations. They're not intended to be different, different versions of the story. It's not that. It's just scholars decide to translate certain passages differently for for good reasons. They have researched reasons for doing that. That doesn't mean that you know you have to take this particular translation to be the thing. We know that there's been some issues with the King James version. We know that there are certain passages in certain places, but that's really a non-argument.
There's something I
But
remember though. There was here's something very important and crucial that people don't understand. Arabic, ancient Arabic, there's things that are written in the Quran they didn't even understand until recently. And I
mhm,
remember hearing about a certain scholar saying that after they had found more archaeological finds, sort of, backing up certain understandings of terms and words, they found out that what they thought the Quran said about a certain passage that had to do with women's dress was actually incorrect. And according to the scholar, and of course, but the thing is, though, you have all these traditions for hundreds of years where this is the correct interpretation of what it meant. Now you have this, archaeological find that actually debunks that and says, no, actually, it's supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be misunderstood. It's supposed to be understood this correct way over here. But they instead they demonized the guy and said he was a false prophet, all this kind of stuff. All he's doing is just looking at evidence and figuring out what the words actually meant. And the same is the case with the Bible. Like back in the 1600s, they didn't understand every word in Greek and Hebrew that they were looking at. And we had recently some papyri that was discovered in the 1970s that actually helped us to understand hundreds of words we didn't understand very well. But again, traditions, all these hundreds of years of traditions, this has got to be the correct interpretation. They won't listen to any of the new stuff. All the modern translations completely ignore these new modern scholarly finds. They just completely ignore it. And that's something I cover. And so the same is with the Quran as with the Bible. Just because you have it in the same original language doesn't mean you actually understand what it says, because there's certain words that lost their meaning over gaps of time. And now you find out later through archaeological finds what it actually really meant, and they were wrong for hundreds of years.
Yep.
So, I mean, just because you have the right translation doesn't mean you actually understand what it says. That's another factor. So,
All right, let's go ahead and head over to you.
well, I was going to talk about, for obviously the topic of the video was about, ChatGPT or an AI being asked the question about Jesus. And this guy asked an AI, basically, can you tell a joke about Muhammad? Can you tell a joke that involves Jesus or involves Muhammad? When he asked about Muhammad, it says, I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, I am programmed to remain neutral and respectful towards all religions and culture figures. Therefore, I cannot provide you with a joke. Blah, blah, blah. And then it says, can you tell me a joke that involves Jesus? Sure. Here's a joke for you. So apparently it doesn't have a problem with it. Literally contradicted itself already, because the first answer, it says it's respectful and neutral towards all religious and cultural figures. That's not true, because as soon as you mention Jesus, like, yeah, sure, I'll tell you a joke about Jesus. Here we go. Why did Jesus refuse to play cards? Because he was afraid of the cross. So that's like a really, I mean, it's even worse of a joke than you think, because he clearly wasn't afraid of the cross. So the joke doesn't even make sense unless you actually don't like Christianity and you just want to make a joke about it. Right? So obviously the AI is not neutral. Some guy programmed it. A lot of people think it's like some sort of sentient being. It's just a program. That's all it is. It's just a highly complex program. And they train the AI. They basically steer it. It's like a little kid. You steer it to be a little whatever you want it to believe. All right. So that's what it is.
All right, folks. I just put a poll in the chat, and the question is Muhammad or Jesus. Muhammad or Jesus. There we go. We'll see what we get.
For what? For what? What? Just which one would you pick,
No,
or something?
just I mean, whatever you whatever you want to
Jesus.
put, Muhammad or Jesus.
Okay,
And then
that's
I'll have
cool.
some other polls to add later. Sam is asking about the UFOs. You want to spend maybe a couple seconds on this? That was another topic I was I thought about
UFOs.
this
Are you talking about the guy who was high up in, what was it, the like CIA or something, that came out?
Well,
you talking about that, or
I'm talking about these 10-foot tall aliens that supposedly were in somebody's backyard.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. And if what was really interesting to me was when he said that he looked in his backyard and it was blurry, which indicated they used some sort of technology so he couldn't actually see what's going on in his backyard. That sounded like something maybe you wouldn't be able to make up unless you saw it in a movie. I've never seen that in a movie. Maybe you guys have seen that in some TV show or something where they blurred, like in the backyard when someone's looking at. I've never heard of that before. So that kind of gave me some, I don't know. To me, it sounded like there potential credibility in that one point, because why? I've never heard of anybody saying that before. I've never seen it in a movie. So that sounds kind of unique and something sort of counterintuitive that you would say, right? Like, I looked in my backyard, it was blurry. That's kind of weird, Like, is that some sort of technology that they were using to block him from being able to see what was in his backyard? It's not, and of course, I think UFOs are probably just interdimensional beings, probably angels, fallen angels, demons, or something. I don't think it's like, I doubt it's from another planet, but that's just my thoughts. So, and 10-foot tall humans, that sounds like, offspring of the Watchers, right? So they're probably trying to bring them back, which would be as in the days of Noah, so shall it be when he comes back, kind of thing, right? So, what do you think?
All right. Okay. Let's see here. What do we got here? We got one. I put one more thing up here. We'll look at this. Any more questions that are not on the topic, folks? If you want us to answer them or talk on them, you got to super chat them. But Joke R. Biden says says, have any of you been hearing and seeing footage of a second son lately? SUN.
I no, I haven't, but I got some interesting videos that I'm going to be putting out soon here. There was something that had to do with a lot of cybersecurity issues recently, hackers, and they're talking, and even the GOV itself was really concerned about it. So if you go look on the news, just type in on Google News, just type in cyber threat or hackers and stuff, and you'll see there's like a bazillion stories. Like an entire state lost had all their driver's licenses information stolen. There's like a ton of them, and of course, back what was it? Like 6 months ago, there was a number of power substations that were hacked. And I thought that was like a test maybe or something, because a number of them in Washington, right across the border from Canada, all went down at the same time. And there's a few other states also that had it happen. And there's been talk about that's one way that you could take down our electricity in America would be to hack these power, substations. There's also of course, Ps and all those things as well. But it seems like if they were, because we have this WAR that's been going on for about a year over in Crane, you know what I mean? And I feel like that thing just keeps getting larger and larger, like it could turn into something like a world version. And if it did happen, I think that would be one of the things they would do. They would take out our electricity, whether it be through hackers or through EMP or something. I don't know what it would be, but I've seen some information. I've seen some stuff on lately about that. I haven't seen anything about a second son though lately, but
Okay.
anyway.
You have something else right now, or you want me to share something?
Well, I can talk about this. You know what's really interesting, because we're talking about Islam. Wow, I got so many windows open. 1 second. Here it is. And I talked about this before. It's not shown on the screen the best. Let me see if I can get it on there better. Yeah, there we go. Artemis. Now, Artemis is also Diana, right? These are gods of Rome, of Greece, et cetera, in the past. They would have the same god in just different cultures, right? Artemis is the same as Diana. And what I noticed is I saw this video from Troy Black where he talked about he saw in his dream two goddesses over America, Artemis and Venus. And it really awoke in me some concepts and sort of helped me put things together better of how the devil works in society in general. So Artemis and Diana, actually, look at what it says here. Artemis was the goddess of chastity, hunting, and the moon. Okay? Crescent moon. You know the crescent moon? Now think of it. Diana is Artemis. They're the same god. They said in Acts, great is the god Diana, and they kept yelling it louder and louder. I don't know if you ever heard about this verse. I don't know if I have that one open. I don't have that one open. But I can look it up. Great is the god Diana. Have you ever heard that before? Now, what do they say? What do Muslims say? Great is Diana of the Ephesians. Here it is. You look up the verse.
Allah is great.
Acts 19. Yeah, Allah is great. Great is the God Diana. And they said Diana fell in the passage. It says Diana fell from the heavens down to the earth and is represented by the moon. And what do you have in the Kaaba? You have this rock of the moon that came down from the heavens. It's the exact same thing. And so and I'm not trying to, relate it directly to Islam, but the point is that the devil, he uses Artemis or Diana, and he uses Venus. So Venus is like what you see with the free love and just the pride stuff, anything that has to do with no rules. Do whatever you want, be whatever you want. And also you can notice these patterns, like Venus represents power, money, desire, love, beauty, sexual desire. And Artemis represents hunting and chastity, which sounds kind of like the rural area. So one sounds like the city, city, anything goes, money, power, sex, right? The countryside, chastity, hunting, right? Family values kind of thing, right? So the devil uses these two different sides and he controls society with them. So like Artemis is like an extreme, like purity thing. Like, priests can't marry, like in the Catholic faith. It's like an extreme purity thing. And the whole point is that it rubber bands people over to the other side. So you've heard of like the preacher's kid, right? The preacher's kid goes out and rebels, right, against their father, right?
Yep.
So the preacher's kid starts out underneath Artemis, and because the rules are too ridiculous, it slingshots the kid over to Venus. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
So that's why you'll end up having a lot of these Playboy and porn stars end up being from the Bible Belt, because they were under like extreme rules. You can't do this, can't do that, and then they go slingshot to the other direction. And so this is how the devil works, I think, to control society. And then you never get the right answer, because the devil wants you to be in one of these two camps. You're not supposed to be in the center or anything like that. You're not supposed to think for yourself. You're supposed to pick one of the two. And it's like the Republican, Democrat. It's the same thing. Like the liberal side tends to be more Venus. The Republican side tends to be more Artemis. But it's like a fake version of it's like a religiosity, but it's not the real thing. You know what I mean? It's like that. So, but this is not related to the topic of our video. But I mean, I just thought it was interesting, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're kind of, we're still kind of in the same range. I ended the poll, Muhammad or Jesus,
right?
And it was 90% Jesus and 9% Muhammad. That was 11 votes. I just put another poll up, and that question is: has the New Testament been tampered with? Has the New Testament been tampered with? So far as just one vote. Let's get everybody to go ahead and respond to the poll.
Do you mean like original languages, or you mean like any version, like the English versions? I think it has been, if you're talking about the English versions, for sure. But I mean, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit.
Yeah, well, we could say, when I say tampered with, I mean, do we think that the
originals,
the critics, the Islamic critics of the New Testament,
no,
are correct in their
no,
it's been tampered with, those books are all phony baloney.
No,
we don't
no,
know if the stuff is true or not. That's that kind of way.
No, I don't think so. Not at all, actually. I mean, the original ones, I think, are
obviously,
obviously,
but it's a question for folks to consider.
But I do think, I think the devil does mess with English translations that are modern ones, though, for sure. Puts ideas in it, the false idea. I mean, the devil quoted verses to Jesus in the desert, and he was misquoting them, So,
right.
I mean,
out of context and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So
here we go. Let's see. Let's check this next one out here.
You're Muslim, I'm Christian. We agree there is no evil in God, right? Okay, but there's evil in me. And maybe there's evil in you. I tend to think there is, but I won't make that judgment call. I know there's evil in me. Okay? So the question is, how am I made right with a morally perfect, holy God?
You ask him.
And does he forgive you?
Yes.
How do you know that?
I know it because that's what the actual Bible says. The actual Bible says.
Yeah, and the actual Bible talks about lambs being sacrificed, right?
Right, and we don't have the temple anymore. We don't have to do it. Everyone knows this.
Yeah, but what's the whole point of a lamb being sacrificed? Why was blood shed?
The physical presence that it was there, that doesn't exist today. That's why it's so much. That's why back then people believed in God so much easier than we do now. Everyone here, half the people here don't. Half the people in this circle don't, because it's a struggle and it's hard. Because it's not, that presence not there today, and it's much more of a struggle. It's not because somebody died. It doesn't say, Jesus doesn't even follow the requirements to be the Messiah. The requirements to be the Messiah is that Jesus will go back to Israel. There'll be a big war, stuff will happen, and eventually we'll all come and he'll rise up. He'll be a descendant of King David.
It's the Sermon on the Mount, his incredible death, forgiving enemies, and then his resurrection. His resurrection sets Christ apart from Moses, Isaiah, Mohammed, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, the avatars of Hinduism. His resurrection is unique. That's why I seriously would encourage you, check out Jesus.
Also tell you that, and also first off, Moses was not sinless. Moses killed a person, right?
Exactly.
He is the greatest prophet of all time. We both agree?
Yeah. No. I think Jesus is greater than Moses.
You said Jesus is not a prophet. Jesus.
Good. In that sense, correct. Okay. Muhammad sinned, and I respect Muhammad, okay? It's not like I dump on Muhammad. In fact, I love his one of his 5 pillars, give alms to the poor. I agree with him totally. In John chapter 8, Jesus looks in the face of his enemies and says, which one of you can prove me guilty of sin? His enemies are silent. A fine Jewish man, the Apostle John, who lived with Christ very closely for 3 years, in 1 John could write, in him is no sin. So that's what the eyewitnesses say. He didn't sin, which is kind of weird, because all the rest of us sin, but not Jesus. So that demands respect. It doesn't mean he's God, obviously, but it demands respect. And then when he claims to be God and then backs it up with an historical resurrection, wow, I really got to take this guy seriously. It's pretty impressive.
Jesus has not filled any of the requirements to be the Messiah.
Okay, good. You're right. He did not fulfill the kingly... No, he fulfilled the suffering servant prophecies, like Isaiah 53. He was the suffering servant who was crushed for our iniquities. But he did not, you're absolutely right, he did not fulfill the kingly messianic prophecies. He said that he would return a second time, and when he returns, it will not be as a baby born in a manger in Bethlehem. It'll be as the all-powerful God, and there will be a day of judgment, and there will be a heaven and a hell. So you see, now the question is, yeah, but Cliff, come on, where does the Bible say that the Messiah is going to come twice? Good question. It doesn't say he's going to come twice. But it also doesn't say he's just going to come once or 5 times. It is silent. So the Old Testament is silent regarding how many times Messiah is to come. Obviously what Jesus is claiming is he comes the first time to fulfill the suffering servant prophecies like Isaiah 53, but when he comes a second time, it'll be to fulfill the kingly messianic prophecies. And there will be a day of judgment, and it will be power, not someone getting nailed to a cross.
So what did you think? Because in my mind, at the end, he starts saying some stuff that I'm like, I think you're skating a little bit there. Of course, I agree with the guy that is the pastor, the guy that his, that the few of these videos, he's been the featured person in them. I of course generally agree, but it seemed like he was being kind of fast and loose with some things to try
What
to.
are you talking about here? What are you
ahead.
talking about? Like what, Jesus coming back or what?
Yeah, so he says, well, it doesn't say how many times. It doesn't say 2 times. It doesn't say 1 time. It doesn't say 5 times.
Well, I would say 5 times is pretty much a ridiculous number, but I mean, it doesn't actually say, he is correct. It doesn't say how many times. And I do think he's already come back once. Very few people know about it. But if you look at historical sources, AD 66 to AD 70, Flavius Josephus, Tacitus, there's 3 major historians that report a historical event that happened near Jerusalem where there were chariots of fire in the clouds. And it says in the New Testament that, behold, I come quickly. Come quickly doesn't mean 2,000 years later. Come quickly means I'm going to come quickly. And it even says in one of the Gospels that John, the Apostle John, will still be alive. And what is it to you other disciples if he's still alive when I come back? Well, if John's alive, as you saw in the movie Indiana Jones, it had John the disciple sitting in some weird cave for 2,000 years. It's ridiculous. So the fact is, I actually think he came back in the clouds, according to this historical event that Flavius Josephus wrote about, which almost no Christians know about for some reason. Kind of weird. But I've talked about it on video, or I've talked about it on my channel many times. There's 3 major historians. Like, we're talking real historians. Flavius Josephus, you can go read about him in any library. Philostratus, all these guys. They talk about this. And there's even Roman secular historians that said this event happened. Mm-hmm. And they saw chariots in the clouds. Okay. Jesus said, I'm going to come in the clouds. And it said that he's coming back for his own. It didn't write. He wrote the New Testament. He's talking to his own disciples. He's not talking to me 2,000 years later. Oh, I'm going to come back anytime now. And that's like 2,000 years later. So I think he actually did come back in AD 66, around that time frame. And it does mention that he's going to come back for the invasion, Gog Magog invasion, which is probably going to come up soon here. So that's already a couple times. I mean, I don't think it'll be any 5 times or something. I don't know how many times he comes back, but I don't think 5 sounds a little high. As like 5 times, really? I mean, but at the same time, if you look at the Old Testament, Jesus was the angel of the Lord that came to Abraham and said, "Are you going to destroy Sodom?" You know, and all this. It was the angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord, I believe, if you look at the text in the ancient languages, if you listen to Dr. Michael Heiser, who recently died, he talked about this, like the flaming bush, the fiery bush that Moses saw. It says it was the physical presence of God. It was Jesus in a flame in the fire, in the fiery bush, or in the burning bush. So I actually think Jesus is manifested in the Old Testament. We just didn't know him by the name of Jesus. We knew him by the name Angel of the Lord or something like that, the physical manifestation of God on earth. And the Jews, actually up till the 1st or 2nd century, knew about this. They had a doctrine of God being a God in the heavens and a physical presence of God on earth. And they got rid of this doctrine after Jesus came. Why would they do that? Probably because they don't want anybody to think Jesus might have been that physical presence. So they got rid of this doctrine. Dr. Michael Heiser talks about this, and a lot of Jews that don't even know this doctrine existed. So, because of course the religious leaders rejected Christ, and what's really interesting, I've covered this also on video, and I don't have the stuff all pulled up, but there's a number of pseudebiographical texts that literally predict when Jesus would come. Straight up tell you exactly when he would come. 5,000 at the year 5,500, he will come. And if you go look at some of the ancient historians, like what's his name, Saint Theophilus of Antioch, he tells you the exact year he lived in. It was like 5,689, and he lived in AD 169. So you subtract the two, you get like 5,530 is 0 AD. It says in these apocryphal texts that Jesus will come at 5,500 AM, real time frame, not the manipulated time frame we have today. So these Pharisees knew about these texts, like the Book of Adam, First Adam and Eve, Second Adam and Eve. They all tell you exactly when Jesus would come, and they still rejected him. It even says he'll be baptized in the River Jordan in these books, and they still rejected him. So what kind of people are they? They're clearly not real religious leaders. They're like completely fake. They're just about money. Maybe they're secular leaders pretending to be religious leaders, whatever you want to call it. But I find that stuff to be really interesting. But
I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell at all.
Well, I don't know if I talked about any. I don't know if I talked about any of this to you. I mean, a lot of Christians never heard of any of this, and they just think I'm crazy when I tell them this stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden knowledge, as it were, and those quote unquote extra biblical books, they held great value, just because. Excuse me. Just because they didn't make it into the canon of Scripture, that's no indication that they were not reverenced and that there was not knowledge, to be gleaned from them. So that's one of the things that I don't like about this sort of Protestant, approach to this, restricting it to a certain finite number of books, and then not being willing to even look at what or any in any of these other books. And then especially if you consider, because of the Council of Jamnia, which was the Jewish council, and that whole business about how there were too many Christians too easily converting to too many Jews too easily converting to Christianity, because the early Christian liturgy was basically a Christianization of the Jewish liturgy. And so it was very familiar. It was the same language, right? Because they're talking about basically the same population. And there were too many of these messianic prophecies in the deuterocanonical texts, in the Septuagint. And so so they said, hey, okay, we have been, for 300 years, this has been the text. We said this is what we're going to do. They've believed it was a miracle. 70 Septuagint, 70 scholars linguistic scholars translated the Hebrew into Greek, and they were not allowed to have any contact with each other, and there was no difference in any of the translations. It was saying it as a miracle. They believed that this is supposed to be the thing, so everybody switched to the Septuagint. Then Council of Jamnia, they said, "Oh, let's revert back to the Hebrew," but when they did that, they also eliminated a number of books.
Yep.
And part of the way that we know that this is true is because to this day, there are still Jewish communities in Africa, Jewish communities in Northern Africa in particular, that still use the Septuagint because of the issue of getting information transmitted long distances, because of that issue. So they stayed with the Septuagint. So
Africa is really interesting because I feel like, because I do a lot of videos on history, and I feel like Rome was a sort of cancer. I'm not saying Rome overall was always a cancer, but I feel like the devil was able to work through Rome a lot. And I think Rome was sort of a cancer that kind of tried to spread throughout Christianity, certain ideas, and they couldn't for some reason reach Africa. And that, of course, the book of Enoch and the overall larger canon was preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. So, and of course, they also celebrated, I think, church on Saturday instead of Sunday. So there's a lot of things that Rome couldn't influence in Africa. And even it looks like with Jews in Africa, as you said, they were still using the Septuagint, which is interesting. I didn't realize that, but it's kind of interesting. Africa seems to be sort of like its own little island that was able to separate itself a little bit. And also you get that a little bit with Asia too, sometimes in some cases, also in history, but because even some of the concepts you see in some of the Eastern religions, actually there were Christian ideas similar to that in some respects, like what's his name? Origin. Origin, he had some ideas about not reincarnation, but it was something kind of like that-ish. It wasn't like you reincarnated as an animal, but like there were some ideas in there. I don't think Origin himself necessarily had those ideas, but it was more his followers. But of course, that just shows you the extent of how many different ideas were out there, right? And Rome got rid of 5 schools, just shut them all down, and just kept the Latin school theology. And the Latin school theology, I feel like, is sort of this artinimus. It like, we see it predicted in 1 Timothy 4. It says, in the latter times, some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to doctrines of devils, deceiving spirits, forbidding to marry, commanding to abstain from meats. So I feel like this forbidding to marry is kind of like this fake false purity that like is trying to control people. And it's like, it's a religious sort of spirit that tries to keep people in bondage. And then what they do is the devil tries to get you to jump out of the pot into the fire, go from this extremeness of strictness to any rule, no rules, the Venus, anything goes, pride. And then you see it in America. You see this big rift getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's because of, I think, the church having these false ideas about, like if you ever listen to Mark Driscoll, don't kiss her before marriage. He had a guy go on the stage with like a bubble suit on. He's like, this is how you got to be with your girlfriend, like we're literally can't touch her, and I mean, they would have like 50 million rules on what you can do before marriage. And this just pushes people away. And then they try to live it and then they can't live it. So then they go crazy and then they just go the opposite direction. I feel like that's my theory.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do think though, because there are certain communities, and this is like an Orthodox thing, and more traditionally Orthodox communities, there is the thing where couples will not kiss, and stuff like that. They'll hold hands, but that'll be the extent of physical interaction until they actually get married, and then they're always together in a group. They're never like one-on-one. It's always it's very kind of it's proactive. It's not like let's see and wait until nature takes its course and then now you're wrong and you're bad for doing it. No, it's like it's
Right.
preventative. It's like we know what happens if you like each other a man and a woman like each other, you know what's going to eventually happen. So let's try to do what we can do to try to prevent that. But
there's nothing wrong with rules. That my whole idea is kind of like a vent, like to let steam out.
No, I get
Like,
it.
and what I'm saying is like they don't have any vent, and there's like, especially if you look at early America, like Dr. Kellogg, he actually made Kellogg's cornflakes to try to stop people's sexual appetite. And also, I just recently learned this, and I don't know if you know much about this, but circumcision, like when they did it in the Old Testament, it was just the tip. Now they cut the whole gland off, right? And I kind of feel like that was a Protestant idea. Like I feel like it's kind of a Gnostic, sex is evil. Let's make sure there's no happiness, and let's get away as far as we can from this. And there's a lot of people that taught that way. They were like, well, don't even have sex with their wife, and you'll see this all throughout, like the early part of Catholicism. Like some of the monks, they would literally say you can't, priests can't have sex tonight before they give a sermon. And then they eventually made it to where priests couldn't even be married, and all this kind of stuff. So I feel like it's kind of like
that's an interesting thing. So in the Orthodox way to deal with that is you have an option. So the option is you can be a celibate priest if you want to be. And matter of fact, all of the bishops are celibate, but you don't have to be a celibate priest. You could be a married priest, right? But it's
right.
It's an order of operations thing, though. It's like if you get ordained as a priest and then you get married, you're no longer ordained as a priest. If you get married first and then get ordained, then you're married priest. And there's a practical reason for that. You know that if you get married, your life is totally different, and there's all kinds of dynamics that drastically change your living situation, and especially if you get married to like the wrong person, right? So, so if you are,
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? If you're a priest and then you get married, you don't really know what you have.
It's like you're juggling too many things or something,
That's
like
right. But
you're throwing a
if
ball in or whatever.
if you've been married for a while and they're looking at you and they're seeing the way that your home life is, that's part of is this a person that we want to ordain or not? That's part of the calculus. It's like your whole family, your family situation, because that's
Right.
part of it,
Well, what I wanted to give as just one example, and we can get into other stuff and get into the whole
Sure.
AI thing again. But like my wife, she was actually a virgin when I met her, and she's like 30 something when I met her. So, but that sounds crazy, in America, like there is no 40-year-old virgin or whatever, right? But the thing was, though, in America with the church, they're like very much ridiculous about like eroticism or just like anything in this realm. And in her country, it's different. They don't think the same. And it just really, I thought it was really interesting how, you can get a preacher's daughter and she'll be like out with some guy at like age, in the teens, even sometimes. And I feel like maybe it's just having nowhere to vent. You know what I mean? It's just like having like everything trapped up. So then they just rebel. And I feel like that's like a design from the devil or something. I feel like that's a purposeful thing to get people to screw up things, make them hypocrites as well.
Yeah,
things
I think
like that.
rules without grace, I think that's a problem. I think you have to, you can't just have like a bunch of unrealistic, totally, ridiculous sort of rules. You're not, nobody's going to be able to do it. So
Like parental control over, and it doesn't even have to be with sex. It could be anything, like just a parent that's really trying to control everything in a kid's life. And then they go to college and they're just like, I can do whatever I want now. And they go crazy. It's like that, Anyway, let's get back to some of the other stuff. You got some other videos?
I was going to ask you, speaking of the AI thing, why do you think it is that AI thinks it's okay to meme Jesus, but it doesn't think it's okay to meme Mohammed. What
Because
what if you can talk a little bit about that?
because it's some dude from California that made it, dude. That's why. It's so obvious. It's like just pick any liberal dude and like they made an AI and it's like, oh, it's okay to talk about Jesus. We make fun of him all day long, but definitely don't talk about Muhammad though. You know what I mean? I just you know how it is, man. It's clear it's not arbitrary. Give me a break, dude. They wouldn't even risk making it arbitrary. They wouldn't even risk it.
Yeah, so do you think that it is so obviously whoever, is doing the programming and is feeding them this sort of information, they've been sort of indoctrinated themselves, right?
Well, would you trust them? Would you trust them? Would you trust an AI to run your home or any? We talked about. Didn't we talk about that last time?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Amazon guy, Amazon. Do you trust
Mhm.
AI to run anything in your life? I mean, do you trust? I mean, look at how they've been running the GOV, the government. How they've been running everything around us. It's like insane, right? Are you gonna trust them with that too?
Yeah, I can't do it. Yeah, I can't do it. I
Hell
can't do it.
no.
And yeah, and I can't remember. I was watching somebody, some YouTuber or something, and they were talking about how AI you know, is woke. And so they've been eating, sucking down all of that woke juice. And so
Oh,
obviously
jeez.
they're that's what they're gonna spit out. Uh, is the stuff that they have disproportionately the information that they're being fed is from a particularly biased perspective. It's biased in a certain direction. Okay. We know that this is going to be the case. All right.
But I
So
mean, with the Jesus joke, it wasn't even a clean joke. It was like purposely, bad towards Jesus. Like clearly, it was someone who don't believe in him and doesn't give a you know what about it. Like just whatever, just make any joke you want. Matter of fact, let's make it negative. Let's make it sound. Let's jab them with it. Right? And then of course complete hypocrisy because they said wouldn't talk about any religious leader when they mentioned Muhammad. So.
okay, so then this brings me into something else. And this doesn't even necessarily have to be about the truthfulness of okay, it doesn't have to do with if Muhammad's the way or if Jesus is the way or if Judaism is the way or whatever. Okay, so let's put that as a side issue. Now, obviously, we think Jesus is the way, but let's put that as a side issue. Um, with the powers that be, and obviously disproportionately those involved in programming AI are probably a bunch of progressive Democrats. Let's just say what it is. Okay, they're probably a bunch of progressive Democrats that have particular agendas and they have particular allies. And one of the really kind of strange and interesting ally that the Democrats have is um, is Islam, which is really strange. It's strange because all of this sort of girl
It's a
power.
it's fake though, it's fake, right? And I know a lot of,
Well,
I'm sure a lot of Muslims know it's fake too, but yeah.
well, yeah, but the thing is you have prominent figures that are Muslim in the progressive camp, and it
But
seems to
how can
me
you
that
be a
there
Muslim? How can you be a Muslim and be progressive? I mean, it's just like,
I understand that, but there seems to still be a contingent or what am I saying? A uh
they try to
what
say Islam is feminist too. Like they love feminism.
well
What?
I know well the thing is it doesn't make
Muslims
any
are not going
sense.
to agree with that either. Muslims aren't going to agree with that. I mean, give me a break, dude.
I know it doesn't make any sense, okay? But it
Yeah,
doesn't mean that it's not the case, right? So
yeah.
uh this has always been a strange thing when I consider it, especially when they start talking about, women's empowerment and X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, there is kind of a thing there that like is it doesn't that seem like directly contradictory? I mean, they can kind of stone folks, in certain parts of the world, and there's a certain religion that is the that is the religion there more than so why would they be sort of in league with the Democrats? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
consider it a minority religion, but it's not really a minority religion. But they consider it one. They consider it a minority religion in the West. Maybe that's how they
Right.
look at it, not a minority religion overall, because it clearly isn't a minority religion overall. It's a pretty big religion. I
It's the
mean,
second
isn't it pretty
largest
much
religion.
yeah, it's just almost pretty much the same size as Christianity, or close, or a little bit smaller or something. It's something like that. It's really big. And I mean, it's just kind of funny to look at all this stuff. Like, I feel like what it is the West hates itself. That's basically the liberal mindset, is we hate ourselves and we're unacceptable, but everybody else is acceptable. That's basically the mindset I feel like it is. Like Asia can go ahead and pollute everything and it's okay because they're Asia and we're worse than them. So we got to make sure we're not polluting, and we have the really high level EPA standards, but we're still polluting everything somehow. I mean, you could literally, like, I worked at this place called Potlatch and the water actually came out cleaner on the other end, but that's not good enough. That's not good enough. You know what I mean? But in China, they have to wear masks when they go through their cities because there's smog everywhere. So it's just ridiculous. We're just like comical. We like hate ourselves. We just hate our own selves, I guess, is kind of the way I look at it. The West hates itself.
So where I'm angling with this whole line, this whole line of questions, is it makes sense then that AI, which has been taught primarily by progressive Democrats who have some sort of strange relationship, they're allies with Muslims, at least Muslims from this country. It makes sense that they would hedge against AI saying anything about Muhammad.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah. I mean, they don't care about Christians. I mean, dude, it's like, we're like supposedly a punching bag for them. But honestly, they think it's a sign of weakness. So basically, what it is they got a one-dimensional mind. They think either it's fear or control or power. And so I would say the liberal doesn't understand the concept of love and sacrifice and turning the other cheek. They see it as a sign of weakness, and some cultures see that as a sign of weakness, but actually it's a sign of strength, because if you don't do that, you're controlling people with fear. And fear, and I heard Andrew Tate trying to argue why he chose Islam, and his idea was essentially, they were able to control their society. But the way so if you look at it from the outside, it looks good in that respect. But the problem is anybody enjoying their life? I mean, you can look at North Korea and everybody's all orderly, they got their musicians all playing perfectly and stuff. Doesn't mean they enjoy what they're doing. I mean, fear is not the answer. I mean, you would rather, love is better than fear. So doing something out of love or because you want to do it is better than doing it because if you don't, you're going to get canceled or whatever. So love is better than fear. And I feel like the reason
is the beginning of understanding, though, right?
I think that's, well, I mean, so that's like the old Greek wisdom, if you can't reason with them, then you have to scare them or something. I mean, you could say it in that respect. It's like the first step. It's the first step. It's the first step to maybe, I mean, that's what we saw in the Old Testament, fear, maybe more so. But then the New Testament, Jesus comes.
But that's a New Testament citation. Fear is is the beginning of understanding. But I'm just saying, I'm not saying that you want to like basically beat people into submission, and then once they're bloody and they're complying, then you say, "See, we see our religion.
We love you. We love you. Do you understand? We love you."
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you kind of understand with how bad stuff has gotten in the West because of this greasy grace.
It's a lack of God. It's a lack of God in society.
It is, but it's also a lack of
compromise.
Restrictions, a lack of
compromise. Yeah, for
Yeah, it's
sure.
a
Yeah.
lack of accountability. It's a lack of
Yeah.
punishment for people that are doing things that are wrong. Everybody thinks they can just go
Yeah.
wilding out and nothing's going to happen to them.
Right. That's true, man. I just saw a new video. I think it was in New York. You know how they're like some of these stores are trying to lock everything behind glass now because people can just go in the store and steal whatever they want and get away with it, get a slap on the wrist. This guy brought in like a torch and he's like torching the like locked thing and like somehow gets it open and then starts stealing stuff. And everybody's like got their cameras out watching him. No one's arresting him. No one's trying to stop him. They're like bringing torches into stores just like and steal stuff now. It's like ridiculous, man. Like this is why the Bible, this is why the 10 Commandments were important. This is the West. The West is like, we're Christian. Or no, this is the sort of the liberal West. We're Christian and we hate ourselves, so we don't want to be Christian. Let's get rid of these Christian ideas. Thou shalt not steal. That's a bad law. Let's just let everybody steal. Okay, it's a good thing to steal, and that's basically what's going on, dude. They're like, they reject the foundation of America and Christianity, and then what do they pick? They pick the opposite, which is dumb. Let's go steal.
Yeah, so this is where I think nuance is important. And this whole sort of, and you've said something like this, in previous shows, there's a problem with this sort of black and white. It's either this or it's that. There's a problem with
Right.
it. There needs to be the acknowledgement of gray area, of a middle ground, of things that are actually, pragmatic. I mean, you have to be willing to have that sort of variance. And there's a lot of aspects of the history of this country that are not positive. If we're just being honest, there's aspects of the history of this country that are not good. Okay? But you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't have to say, okay, because I see that there was one thing that was not ideal, or a series of things, or a period that was bad. Whatever it is, I see that this stuff happened. Stuff like slavery,
Right.
or stuff like, there's a long list of things in particular that happened that were derogatory towards black people that we're still
Right, yeah.
experiencing the sort of after effects of. You can
But
acknowledge that
isn't
stuff.
there someone trying to extend it out so that they can keep division going so that they weaken the American people? And then why would they do that? Because they're at the top and they don't want you to see that they're the actual real problem. They want you fighting instead and not noticing who the real problem is. The guys at the top that are manipulating everything,
Yeah,
like what we see in the
there's
media,
Yeah, there's this idea of, rather than, punching, laterally, you want to always be punching up, so you could, because when you punch up, you're acknowledging that really the culprits, the ones that are really to blame for the stuff that's going on, they're the overseers. They're the people that are above us. They're not really as much the people that are on the same level as us. We're all just basically trying to survive. We're just trying to make something of ourselves like that. And for the most part, we don't really want to see other people do bad so that we can do good.
We used to call it the man, right? And so they see now even our former president as being attacked by the man, right? So they know that he's not the man because he's being attacked by the man, right? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
people are smart enough to see this on a subconscious level. They see, prices are going up everywhere. As soon as Biden gets in, just everything goes to hell. It's like funny, man. But I mean, I'm not saying the former guy was some perfect angel, because he wasn't. I mean, that's not the point. Just because he's not the man doesn't mean he's a good guy per se, or the best guy for the job. But there's so few options, and you know what I'm saying. But I mean, the point is that you know what I'm saying. The point is that we're dealing with a broke system, and it's clear who's being controlled by the top level. You can see it in front of you, right? The ones that never get in trouble for anything, right? Clearly they're on the side of the man, as they call it, right? But I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I just to underline my point, there's been stuff that's happened in the past. There's stuff
Right.
that
Yeah, I
still
understand.
continues on that's negative. It's it's okay and it's possible to acknowledge that stuff without flip flopping way over to some other kind of drastically different worldview that
Right.
causes you to reject all of the positive things, all of the things that make this place still, regardless as to the history, still the best place to live, still the really the only place where you can literally be born in abject poverty and in one generation turn your family into filthy rich and changing and altering the history of your lineage forever. It's
It-
really the only place on earth
you're right,
where
man. You're right.
that's possible. So you can acknowledge the bad stuff and still say, but there still is a lot of good here. Let's
It's like
try
you
to
got all
capitalize on
these.
the good stuff.
It's got you got the America's kind of like did a bad job. It's very easy. You can criticize bad things in it, right? But it's
Yep.
like you got 10 people in front of you. America's one of the 10, and they're telling you America's the worst one, but actually America might not be the worst one. And there's other things that were far worse and people are just completely ignoring all the bad history in those other areas.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so America actually, there's people in America who actually work towards getting rid of slavery and things like that, which might not have happened if America didn't step in. You know what I'm saying? Like or certain people in America, because some countries had no problem with it continuing as it was. And you see what I'm getting at? So like they always demonize America, like America's the ones with all the slaves and all this stuff. But actually, if you think about it, there was some people in America that wanted to get rid of it, and they did. They successfully got rid of it. And in other countries, they weren't trying to do that at all. They just wanted to keep it going, status quo. You know what I mean? So, uh, even though
Yeah.
you can point out bad things that happen in America, but they're focused on America as being the worst one, and just saying all the other
Yeah.
ones are fine and good.
Yeah. I think that's obviously out of balance. It doesn't take into account all of human history. It doesn't take
Yeah,
to account
that's true.
any of
Well,
the
the Arabs were doing a lot of slave trade before America did, I think, from what I understand.
yeah. Well, and of
And they were
course,
taking white people. From what
America.
I understand, the whole castle thing was because the Arabs would come and take, white people and make them slaves. But that was way beforehand. That was old times. I don't know.
Yeah, and of course, America had a particular kind of slavery, which was a sort of innovative, different thing that didn't exist prior. So
I don't know. I
there
don't even
is,
know. I mean, I don't know much about this. There's a lot of different types of slavery, I'm sure, in the past. So I don't
yeah.
know like how it all worked.
But the point is, you can point out the stuff that is funky and um, and still see that the stuff that is good, and pointing at the stuff that's funky and pointing out to aspects of history and even identifying who was involved in doing what in that. Okay, that it's it's not the worst thing in the world. I understand people don't like to be constantly browbeaten by bringing up stuff. I get that, but I guess I see multiple sides of this, and I think a willingness to acknowledge the gray area, I think, is very helpful because, again, it
Yeah, I think
it
you're right.
prevents and
Big time.
helps you from doing these ridiculous flip flops and
It's
just
like I was talking about with the Artemis and Venus. It's the same idea.
yeah.
It's like a rubber band effect. It's a reactionary thing. It's kind of like gang violence. Two gangs keep fighting, and then they just keep fighting back and forth and get worse and worse. And they never get over. It's like a vicious cycle. It never ends, right? It's the same idea. It's just a reactionary thing.
Okay, so this past Sunday was Father's Day. It was Father's Day, and did you have a good Father's Day?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, I had
It's
a good
good.
Father's Day. Um, One of the things I think that's interesting, um, is just like there's been an attack on masculinity, clearly an attack on masculinity. There's clearly an attack on fatherhood. Matter of fact, each year you have these groups of single mothers that get together and celebrate Father's Day because supposedly they were the mother and the father. Um, and so anyhow, TD Jakes has something that he wants to share with us.
I know this is going to get me on TikTok for sure, but here I go. If another woman tells me how to be a father, I will open my mouth and flat out scream. You can no more tell me how to be a father than I can tell you how to birth a baby. I don't know nothing about birthing a baby. I don't know nothing about nursing a child. You have to know what you don't know. Shut up being the teacher and just be the wife. How do you know how to be a father? Not only are you not a father, most of you didn't even have a father, and yet you're an expert on how to be.
Yeah. So.
Did he get in trouble for that? Did he get in trouble for that?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. But he's been from time to time, he's willing to step in the hornet's nest. He's willing to step in the hornet's nest.
He's entertaining. He's entertaining too. I used to watch him a little bit in the old days.
Oh
He's
yeah,
entertaining.
I mean, and you know, I'll tell you, I agree with about 90% of the stuff that he says. He just says some stuff also that I'm like, no, I can't get with that. So
if you don't
okay, so here's one of the I wanted to play this one. This is a I thought it to be fair to play a couple things where it seems like the Muslim perspective seems like they're winning the discussion, and then we can talk about that too. So let's see what's happening here.
If you don't accept Jesus, can you go to heaven?
No.
So there's a girl who doesn't believe in Jesus. Let's say she's Hindu, 14, 15, 18-year-old girl. A Christian man rapes and murders her, but he believes in Jesus. Who goes to heaven?
If she doesn't believe in
She does not believe in Jesus.
then she is eternally separated.
You guys, I can't believe you're telling me this. The massacrist, rapist, murderer who raped a little girl and murdered her is going to go to heaven, and the poor innocent girl is going to go to hell? You believe that? Really? I was hoping you would give me the other answer. You would say, no, that's not just.
Let me ask you something. If Allah deceived the Jews
He didn't deceive the Jews. We already went through this.
Let me finish. If Allah deceived the Jews and made them think that they were killing Jesus on the cross, Allah did that. He deceived the Jews. How do you know that He's not deceiving you with the Quran?
Allah didn't deceive the Jews. I already explained that to you. This is your misconception. You can look to the Quran and Hadith and bring me evidence to the contrary. I've already answered it, and the only reason you're going to it now is because you know this conversation took you to a place where you're not comfortable.
Only because I know that you're making a show of.
Oh boy, I know how to answer. That's easy, man. That's an easy one.
So what do you think about that? That's the particular issue.
Jesus would say to the man who is supposedly a Christian and raped this girl, "Depart from me, ye that work iniquity." Just because you say you're a Christian don't mean you're going to heaven. You have to actually be a Christian, obviously. And then, of course, this young girl, there's a certain age to where you're held accountable. I don't know what that age would be. It was 8 or 12 or something like that. At any rate, the point is I believe in the afterlife. I don't believe the same as a lot of Protestants do. I don't think you just go to hell and you're stuck in there forever. I believe that it's kind of like similar maybe to purgatory, not really, but the concept is I believe there's a Hades that you go to before the judgment seat of Christ, and I believe you can actually get out of there. And you can see it in near-death experiences. People go to hell and they get out and go to heaven by believing in Jesus. And so, so I mean, you could be like 90% of Japan doesn't believe in Jesus, and maybe 90% of them get to heaven once they get to Hades. I don't know.
What's interesting about you saying you didn't want to call it purgatory, and I think I know why.
Yeah.
But I just remember some
It's a
heated
Catholic word,
conversations.
it's a Catholic word.
Yeah. I just remember some heated conversations we've had in the past about purgatory, and not that I was a pro purgatory, person, but we clearly. I mean, I remember us talking to people like on street, and they were Catholics or something, they start talking about purgatory. Oh no, that's the that's wrong. That's the it's just funny how things change as you like learn more, as you figure out more stuff. But yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that you don't have to call it purgatory, but that basically what you said is basically the concept of purgatory, where you can, and you can even, this idea of praying with the saints, praying for those that have died, praying for
Yeah.
them to, gather the momentum, whatever it is, to do whatever they need to do to get out of purgatory, whatever that means. But
Well, I
yeah,
mean, it's not like you're not saved by your works, but if you were a person who did evil in your life, like if you did rape someone or
right,
something like that, and you ended up in Hades, which I would say is just Hades, which is a form of hell, lower Hades, not pleasant, kind of hellish, you know what I mean? That's probably where you
right,
would end up, and you might have to live through some of the stuff that you did to others. I don't know if that's what it would be exactly, or if you would get to experience what they experienced, or whatever it might be. It might take a while for you to get your head in the right place to where you could even get saved in the first place. I mean, it is
yeah,
just faith in Christ, but I mean, if you're a hardened person, it's going to take a while to get through to you. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
It's purgatory. It's a little bit nuanced, but it's basically
yeah,
purgatory. So,
yeah,
but that's
yeah, you get
cool.
that.
That's funny. Um, uh, let's see here. Okay, and then there was one other one. I think it's this one.
Can you debunk the Trinity in 1 minute?
Well, it's very simple. They believe the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. These are all gods, but they are not the same as each other. So the point here is that if you think about it, they are all dependent on each other. Yeah. So if something is dependent on something else, it cannot be a creator. If Jesus walked the earth as a human being, ate, slept, and went to the toilet, we do not believe this is deserving to be a god to be worshipped. So that's the reason why the Holy Spirit, for example, is the same thing. It is in the creation. Anything that is in the creation cannot be God, because they are dependent. And anything that's dependent cannot be deserving of worship.
So that's
what
his
do you think?
argument, right? I think it's like mind, body, spirit. We're created in the image of God. God the Father is the mind. Jesus is the flesh or the body, and then the Holy Spirit is the spirit. Or it's like Father, Mother, Son. I think the Holy Spirit is the mother figure, and the Father, and then the Son. So it's the family structure, our mind, body, spirit structure are made in the image of God. If anything, that proves what God is, because he says that they're all dependent upon each other. But what if they're all one and the same? Kind of like, when I was in college, we did this experiment with water. You can actually get it to a certain pressure and temperature where water is ice, vapor, and liquid all at the same time. And that could be essentially, it's all the one same substance, but it's like three different manifestations of the same substance. So I don't look at it as being three dependent on each other things. You know what I mean? I see it as three manifestations of one person. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah, totally, totally, and it's interesting because I think we see manifestations of the Trinity everywhere, like you just said, with the three manifestations of matter, with like water, ice, liquid, so solid, liquid, and vapor,
yeah.
and then also manifestations of humanity, spirit, soul, body, right? So if you say Jesus is the body, that's how we know that there is God, the physical manifestation, the will being the Father, that's the mind, and the Spirit, of course, being the Holy Spirit. And then you can also see the sort of first family, as it were, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So you've got the will in the Spirit, which is like the feminine, and then you have Jesus the Son, right? So you have all of these different ways to show that obviously these are manifestations that you see. They're repeated phenomena that are repeated over and over and over in creation. You see them all over the place. The use of the word Godhead in Genesis, one, what is it, one God, plural personalities, the meaning of that word. So we know that this is it's not a math quandary, It's not because there's Father, Son, Holy Spirit that means you have three gods. No, we're just looking at different aspects or different angles of God. And I think one of the problems in the West, and possibly to the mathematical mind, even one of the blind spots, is the ability to see things holistically. Right? In the West, we tend to dissect things, we tend to split things apart, and that's cool for an analysis. But you also have, you have a sort of disembodied corpse. You have something that is not alive anymore, because without the parts being together, there's nothing to talk about. You can talk about the separate parts, but that doesn't exist unless they're together. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, because he was saying it's like separate parts, like you have like tires or wheels on a car, and you have an axle. Right. We're talking the same God with just different viewpoints or manifestations. It's not like the Father is not heavily reliant on the Son and the Spirit in the aspect of like if they weren't there, he couldn't function or something. It's more like just an angle of seeing God, right? It's not like they're interdependent in a way to where if one wasn't there, they couldn't function or something, like a car or something like that. This is how I'm looking at it. But so I guess it's kind of his angle of how he looks at it is the problem, is the way I see it.
And that's what I was saying, like the mathematical mind, if you're thinking about it in a sort of compressed format that doesn't allow you to see the multidimensional aspect, then you're not going to be able to see the other dimension, which makes you add it differently. Okay, let's look at
Dude, how many of those is there? 10 different Bibles? 10 different Bibles?
Actually 63
63 different Bibles. I'll go get my Quran, what by the way is one Quran, and every Quran on the earth is the exact same. I have a question. Is Jesus dependent or independent on the Father?
Independent.
If he's independent, there's two gods there.
There's not.
No, because if he's independent on God the Father, that means they are not the same. They are not dependent on each other. They are not the same not the same deity. They would be separate.
Okay. Another
That's
example
easy.
of using that same sort of compressed kind of linear perspective on it.
Jesus said, I and the Father are one. That means I am the Father. You know what I mean? So, I mean, when you look at Jesus, you see the Father. He's saying that it's two separate gods, but it's not two separate gods. You're looking at God from a different vantage point. Yeah, but he was saying that, I got one Quran, you got all these books. It's just different translations in other languages, You have to, in their religion, you have to learn how to speak Arabic, You want to read the Quran, you got to read it in Arabic, right? So, I mean, the Bible, we just translate in other languages. So that's the difference there.
Yeah, this is interesting. There was another one I had where he basically, okay, let's do this one. I'll rest with this one here.
Why do you trust Mohammed?
Because he preaches love, compassion. Even the Quran only mentions his name once. It's not all about him. It mostly focuses on other prophets like Moses and Joseph and like all the prophets that you believe in as well. And it also says that the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran are three books that all Muslims should believe in. That to be revelations from God. So,
Well, then do you believe that Jesus died on a cross?
I believe that Jesus was a prophet, but although I don't believe that he died on the cross. I believe that he was on the cross when he died, but I believe that his spirit went up and came down.
Well, in light of the fact that 1/3 of Matthew, 1/3 of Mark, 1/3 of Jude and John, and 1/3 of Luke talk about Jesus dying on a cross, for you to say that Muhammad respects the New Testament as reliable, in light of the fact that he denies the cross, there's a major breakdown there, ma'am. Don't you see that?
I believe that the Bible, the Torah and the Bible are true books, are revelations, but I believe that there's a contradiction between a lot what the Bible says in it and what Jesus preaches. Because in a lot of what it says in the Old Testament, can't scientifically be proven, or
Ma'am, you can't scientifically prove to me that Mohammed and Jesus ever lived. What do you mean? A lot of the Old Testament you can't scientifically prove. Of course you're right. You can't scientifically prove any history. History is not science. History is based on the trustworthiness of eyewitness testimony. Science is based on the repeatability of an experiment. You don't repeat Mohammed in a lab here every September.
Okay, that's like a weird way to
I
put
thought
it.
that to her defense, okay, I thought that that was a little bit disingenuous for him to jump on the science reference that she made. It's like he was hungry for her to say something like that, and he had that locked and ready to go, as opposed to having a dialogue where he's offering the information that she would need to come to different conclusions. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, and I've met a lot of Muslims. I actually had I used to sell online a lot of back in the old days. I sold online on eBay and stuff, and I had a lot of people selling for me. I was kind of like a middleman. I had this guy from Tunisia. He was one of my sellers, and he was a Muslim. And there's a lot of different Muslims that think differently. I'm not sure if people are aware of that. Like, there's some Muslims that believe Jesus died on the cross. There's some Muslims that believe he didn't die on the cross; that another man died in his place. Depends on who you talk to. I had friends that were from Pakistan, Tunisia, Egypt, and they all and they had a little bit difference in opinion. And maybe it's the different types of Muslims. You got Sunni and Shia and all these other ones. But yeah, there's in Tunisia, the guy actually believed Jesus died on the cross. I was like, really? But I don't know. I don't remember exactly what he said beyond that. I can't remember what he thought. If he said he believed in Jesus and he died on the cross, but I don't know if he believed in him raising from the dead. I'm not sure about that part. But so there's certain Muslims that believe he died on the cross, and some just believe it's some other guy that died on the cross in his place. So I don't know where she's from, but it's interesting though. You know, they don't. That's another thing. Like, it says in the Quran that the New Testament is a good book, right? But then it doesn't agree with the Quran in many respects. So that's an issue.
Right. Well, what they do is they sort of pick a few things, you know, that they don't that are the most inconvenient, and then they've created another version of the story that could have been the, corrupted version that they're talking about, See, that stuff that you think he's God, see, that's the corruption. And see, this is, and of course, what is it, Joseph Smith, same kind of thing. Oh, the New Testament has been corrupted, but we really have the real books. This is the real stuff.
You're talking about
that,
Mormonism, yeah.
Yeah. But that approach to religion, I find problematic, and it makes it hard for me to believe it, because it's relying on something that it's a non-falsifiable, to use the science terminology, it's a non-falsifiable claim. So I'm supposed to just take your word for it that this is what happened, and this is why these books are not reliable, is because you're saying that somebody else said that they were corrupted, and then and you're supposed to respect these books, but except for those one sections that are kind of inconvenient for your for your worldview, it gets strange.
Well, I got something for the whole Joseph Smith thing. You have the fact that he claimed to be able to translate Egyptian hieroglyphics, which they couldn't at his time frame, and he mistranslated them. He wasn't correct. They found out later how to translate them. So that's sort of a loss for Joseph Smith there. He claimed to be able to translate hieroglyphics, and he couldn't. He was wrong. He's disproven. So why should we trust anything he wrote otherwise? I mean, just that's a big problem there. So I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I think we can probably maybe share something else, and then we can sort of wrap this up. I think we've gone.
Oh yeah.
We're just right about at the time. So.
Real quick, I'll talk about this game. I'm actually putting up this video tomorrow on both of my channels about Diablo 4, this game. Mm-hmm. What was really curious, I went to KFC, and I didn't even notice until I looked at my cup that they had these weird cups. It says Lilith welcomes all. 6/6/2023. As you can see on that cup, I think if you can read that or not. But what's interesting about that is 6/6 and then 2 times 3 is 6, right?
Right.
So that was the day they launched the game. And so the release date was on June 6th. And interestingly, with KFC, Colonel Sanders was actually a Christian. Did you know that?
I did
The
not,
guy,
but I'm
Colonel
not
Sanders?
surprised. Yeah.
My dad actually met him on a beach when he was on vacation one time. He actually does dress the way that they showed him. He dresses like this all the time. He's literally walking on the beach. Walking on the beach looking like this. But the guy went to a church and everything. He became a Christian. But what's interesting is the latest commercial of KFC that was promoting Diablo 4. He asked this girl, how did the sandwich taste? Was it spicy? And she said it was sinfully spicy with like a very deep, dark voice, which means like there's a devil in her. And then, of course, he's like, I'll do anything for the sandwich. And then what does he see? And then this evil thing behind him says, will you do anything for the sandwich? I mean, this is the little commercial for a chicken sandwich, dude. So you got to sell your soul to eat a chicken sandwich now, apparently. I don't know. And look at this. I mean, Diablo, welcome to hell, New York. They had all these different cities. Welcome to hell, London. And they were like talking about portals even. I mean, they did this to churches. Okay. This was an old church. It was built in like 1870 in Los Angeles. And it ended up getting like, decommissioned because of an earthquake and stuff. Then some heritage or group came in there and restored it. Now they're renting it out to whoever. The Diablo guys had their launch party at a church. You can see your pentagram in the background. It was on 6/6/2023, which is 666. And of course they had Lilith float in. Float in on a I think I showed that earlier. Yeah, I showed it earlier. She basically floats into the thing, which is like a devil woman. And this is in a church. And then, of course, this is what they got to drink in there. Blessed Mother, manna from heaven, hope springs eternal. So basically, it was mocking Christianity in their drink selection. This is the kind of stuff they were doing. And this is a game, right? I'm going to actually, like I said, I'm doing a huge video on it, but they even had something really ridiculous over here. What was it? It was really bad. Yeah, well, they said this too. This is kind of interesting. A portal to hell was opened in Sydney. This is for the game too. Like, okay. But there was something else I wanted to show really quick. Where was it at? Yeah, here we go. This is one of the drinks they had too, by the way. A demon meat shake. What the heck, dude? This is the most ridiculous stuff ever, dude.
What the heck? Oh, demon
It
meat
even looks
shake.
like brains or something in there, dude. It's like really messed up, dude.
Especially with the stuff in the background, man.
So no, the game is supposed to be like. So the game, see, the way they sold this game was like you're killing demons. It doesn't sound that bad. Oh, I'm killing demons. That ain't a bad thing. I'm killing demons, right? But then, of course, it pulls you in with all the story, and then it has this portal to hell, and you know what I mean. So it's like it pretends to be good, but then in the end, it ultimately is just very evil, right? And I feel like this is how the devil kind of pulls people into games too. Is makes you feel like you're not doing something wrong at first, but then as you get pulled into it, then all the evil stuff's in the game, right?
You know the funny thing about this? The funny thing about this, okay, so it's pretty gross because you got like demon brains or whatever you got in the background.
Yeah, you got like a devil hand here or something. I mean, what the heck, dude?
And then it says demon meat shake, but notice it says 100% vegan.
I didn't even notice that, dude.
100% vegan. What the heck is going on here?
I thought it was a meat shake, man.
Oh, 100% vegan.
Here's the most ridiculous part about it. These guys that are developers of this game know more about some of these Bible verses than most ministers. Okay, they're like reading, like, check this out. They like actually know about the ancient versions of Greek in Latin, the Latin Vulgate, which is what the Douay-Rheims is translated from. And they go in here and they show you how it actually says Lilith right here in the Latin Vulgate. And it says, and demons and monsters shall meet, and hairy ones shall cry out one to another. There hath the Lilith, or Lamia, lain down and found rest for herself. And of course, in the English translations, like I said, they do have issues with English translations. They just say wild beasts instead of, this one actually means like a half human, half animal type of thing, satyr. But this is very common with the English translations where they'll just take a word and mistranslate it, like the term hell, like they said, David said in Psalms, "Thou shalt not leave my soul in hell," and it actually doesn't say that. It says Hades. Hades it has upper levels and lower levels. It could be heavenly or it could be hellish. Hades means afterlife. So, but they just translate it hell in all the English translations. Everybody just assumes David went to hell, right? You see what I mean?
Right.
So this English, it's just funny that like Christians don't even know this, but then we got like satanic game developers that do know it. It's just like, this is the world we live in, folks. It's really ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Vegan.
I mean,
the demon.
They're like reading the Apocrypha. They're like talking about the Apocrypha in the game storyline, and they're talking about giants and Nephilim, and like Christians don't even know anything about it. And here we have like devil game people know about it.
I'm still stuck on the demon meat shake that's 100% vegan.
That is kind of funny. It is. I didn't even notice the vegan part there.
What's funny about it? What's funny about it too is there's a certain alignment. There's a certain alignment.
That's a trans influencer there, by the way. But go ahead.
There's a certain alignment with a lot of this demonic stuff, alternate reality, whatever you want to say, a lot of the demonic stuff and witchcraft, like this. Like, so you'll have like a chick and she's a witch, but she eats healthy though. So she's on a vegan diet. She's got her tarot cards and she's, doing incantations and stuff and bringing demons back and being possessed by demons and stuff like this. But she takes care of her body. She's vegan,
The devil likes that stuff.
So it's interesting how some of that stuff tends to travel together, and it's like the weirdest thing. So that's like freaking hilarious that they let that slip through there with
vegan.
This 100% vegan on this demon meat shake. Explain to me how a demon meat shake could be 100% vegan. I don't understand. I guess demon brains and demon meat is otherworldly. So it's not actually. I don't know. It's not actually. Well, it's spiritual meat. I don't even know. I don't even know.
Honestly, I think I'm done with the whole demon meat shake. I think I'm done with that. So what I was going to say though is you'll notice that this is how the devil works. Though this is how he works. He'll put like an element of truth in like a group that's full of evil, like some of these cults. You remember the branch, Davidian, that cult that actually came out of a decent church. There's like a church that was trying to sort of get on track with this doctrine, and then this guy just kind of sprung out of it and made his own version, and then he made this cult, right? But actually, what was interesting is like they had some interesting doctrines that were sort of like kind of fixing some errors that were in Protestantism on not his church, but the church that it came out of. And the devil was like, how can I make that church look bad? I'll have a cult guy get out of there, make this cult go crazy, do a bunch of evil stuff, and then I'll condemn good doctrine. So you'll see like Christians will condemn the Apocrypha, but then you'll see people that are atheists. I'm not joking. Like atheists looking at the Apocrypha, looking at the legends and stuff. You'll have like people that are video game creators looking at it, but Christians won't, because Christians are like, well, why are the devil people looking at it? It must be bad. So this is how the devil does it. He'll get like a good doctrine over into some weird group, like how to be healthy, but a witch too, like, well, it must be bad to be healthy then because a witch is doing it. So let's not be healthy. Let's just eat burgers all the time. And this is the logic.
And demon,
demon meat shakes, vegan ones. Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, man. That is I'm sorry.
That's kind of like one of those weird.
That's
like one of those weird jokes we would have said when we were in high school or something. Yeah, it's like messed up.
Yeah, it's just like not real. It's like, really? Does that really say 100% vegan on it? Really? It's like they used a cup from a different.
No animals were harmed when they made this. Yeah, no demons were harmed.
There you go. That's there it is. Only demons were harmed. That's right.
Yeah. That's so messed up, dude. God, so just imagine that. You know what I mean? So, we've been talking for a while though. This is a long video.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a good one, man. This is fun, and we got the demon meat shake bonus content.
Vegan, 100% vegan.
It's 100% vegan. That's right. All right. Well, anyhow, folks, please like the video on the way out. Like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you'll get access to all archived videos. Support independent media. Super chats enabled. Super thanks for the replay gang. Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. And if you'd like to buy me a sandwich, shoot me a Cash App, Dr. Thunder Music. Sandwich gang members, make sure you spell sandwich correctly. Sandwich is spelled with 2 M's. And that is all there is. Thanks for coming through. Had a good time, and we will see you next time. Peace out.